So I think it's important because I am just like all of them. You know, I was a guy in the comment section and I had to kind of get out of that as I started, kind of getting, I guess, more known in the
Mhm.
community, in different communities, because people take your opinion different when you're actually making content as well. So, I mean, if I'm in the comment section, I want to feel heard.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talk Trash, and stand back for another video. This time, I'm joined by someone that I've recently discovered, but I love his work and I'm excited to chat with him. I'm joined by the one and only Kenny Bomb. So, welcome to the
What's
show.
going on, everybody? Kenny Bomber's in the building. Thanks for having me, Tom. I appreciate you.
I mean, I wanted to rip your intro off, but that sounded very that sounded too fanboy to do that. But if we take this back, where do you first discover wrestling as an overall fan?
So, as an overall fan, really, I don't even remember when I discovered wrestling because I was like 2 years old. I always watched wrestling all my life. With my dad used to watch it, so um, just really hanging out with him when I was younger. He'd be watching wrestling on the couch. I'd sit down there right with him. The first time I remember it connecting with me was Shawn Michaels was my first favorite wrestler, and then the Undertaker is really when it grabbed me. When I saw him, I was in ever since.
Do you remember what year that was? Like era?
Hmm. It had to be like 1993. I would have been
Ooh.
3 years old at that point. So yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah.
So in '93, when you discover wrestling, and you say you're 3 years old at this time, is it literally you're watching whatever your dad's putting on, or are you starting to discover your own fandom and niche within wrestling at this point?
So really just watching whatever he puts on. We used to watch a lot of movies, and wrestling was one thing that we always used to watch. I used to run around the house doing Shawn Michaels stuff all the time. But my first actual memory, I remember his friends used to come over. He'd ask me, "Hey, what's your favorite wrestler?" I'd say Shawn Michaels. They'd all laugh. But my first actually memory of watching and connecting to it, like actually grabbing onto it, was one day when I saw the Undertaker talking backstage. He's been my favorite wrestler ever since. Just the stuff him and Paul Bearer used to do. I used to love it. So.
Mm. So you sort of discovered wrestling sort of pre the new generation era, but sort of pre the Attitude Era. So
Yep,
as
pre-attitude
the,
era. Yeah.
the new generation sort of this starts in sort of 90 94 95, does that change your fandom at all? Do you start consuming more, less, etc.?
I'd say it was the same because it's just been there all my life. Just like it's like asking when you discovered a younger brother or sister, they're just always been there. So I just always loved wrestling. Like growing up, I always had the posters on my walls, always got the toys. We didn't have pay-per-views or things like that. So we'd watch like the pay-per-views over like the little squiggly screens. So it's just all my life. It's really just not a point where I was introduced to it. It was just
Mm.
always there for me. So
Do you ever
I
remember?
know. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Sorry.
I
For
was just
sure, I
gonna.
loved it a lot more in the Attitude Era, but those Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Young Undertaker days, I mean, still loved it at that point too.
You talked about loving it in the Attitude Era. There, did you ever have a point where, because your dad introduced you to it, did you ever have a point in your fandom? Maybe it was the Attitude Era, but did you ever have a point in your fandom where your dad was like, "Okay, I'm gonna take a step back from watching this. You do you, Kevin."
Well, no, not until I got older, actually. So I always watched it. He always watched it up until I was, say, a teenager. He actually stopped watching it, but I mean, me and my brothers, we kept watching it up until today. So I never fell off. He fell off eventually, but if I go to his house right now and I turn it on, he will watch it and he'll be like, "Who's this guy? Who's that guy?" But
Mm.
personally, me, no, there was never really a downtime where I fell off.
You talk about there not being a downtime, so you've been basically a wrestling fan for almost 30 years, correct?
Yes,
So
yes.
in that 30 years, you've seen a lot, right?
Seen a
So
lot. Good times, bad times, but I was just always there sticking around.
if we talk about the bad times for a second, has there ever been a moment that you've been like, I'm gonna stick with this, but oh, if wrestling wasn't my main passion, I wouldn't be watching right now. Was there ever an era that you're like, okay, going back and watching this, I'm not sure why I was a fan and stuff like that?
Well, really, I think during the time, so I loved John Cena when he first came in, when he was doing like the freestyles and everything. But then he turned to the kind of all-American John Cena where he stopped doing that stuff. around that time where, the guys like The Undertaker, The Rock, Stone Cold, everybody was kind of going out and we were getting the new guys in, Batista, Randy Orton, John Cena, they were kind of taking over. I never really fell out of it, but at that point I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on there. This is getting kind of weak, but again, stuck with it. The only time I actually really fell out of it because I watched WWE all my life, really until the pandemic. Actually, when they
Okay.
got in like the empty arenas, that's when I actually kind of fell back. When those 3 hour Raws got really tough, I was like, you know what? I don't have to watch this every week. So I kind of fell off from WWE at that point, but I picked up AEW and I still watched that during the pandemic because kind of liked how they handled everything. They still had the wrestlers like at ringside, so I was still watching wrestling, but I did stop watching the 3 hour Raws and SmackDown during that time.
You brought up AEW there. So I know we're ping ponging a lot. That's just how my
And that's
interviews
fun.
roll. That's just how my interviews roll,
That's
man.
cool.
So in 20 before AEW, what was your consumption of wrestling outside of the WWE bubble?
So growing up, I was always WWE only. Like during the Attitude Era, WWE or WWF at that time versus WCW. I wouldn't watch any WCW stuff. It was only WWF. And then when WWF won, of course, that was a win for us, me, my brothers, and everybody versus everybody in school who liked WCW. And then TNA popped up, same thing. I never watched TNA. I was strictly WWF. But at one point, I did start seeing some of the PWG matches.
Mm.
And I think that's really where I kind of branched off and started watching some other stuff outside of WWE. I think AJ Styles was in New Japan the first time I saw him wrestle. Around that time was the first time I actually saw them. Then I started seeing the Kevin Owens stuff, Ricochet, all that stuff in PWG. I started taking some of that stuff in. And that was really right before AEW started because I did watch All In, the first one with Cody Rhodes and them. That's really when I started getting outside of WWE and sticking in that bubble because um, I don't know. I just saw that one. I don't remember what match it was, but I saw something from PWG and it was just crazy and I wanted to see more. So that's really when I started branching out.
Oh, that's very cool to hear. So when you do start branching out, does your consumption of the WWE product go down at all? I know you talked about the
No,
pandemic, but pre that, does it go down at all?
no. So I was straight WWE no matter what, every Monday, every Thursday, or Tuesday, whenever SmackDown was, and every pay-per-view. So I never stopped watching WWE until the beginning of the pandemic when they had the empty arena stuff. It kind of just took me out of it because it felt like a chore.
Mm. As someone that has been, you talked about it feeling like a chore during the pandemic, but before we get into that, because I feel like there's some deep stuff to dig into there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
before we get into that, as someone that's been a wrestling fan, in your own words, for almost 30 years, what is one era that you feel like, okay, if you have the network, check this out because it's underappreciated, maybe?
Underappreciated. I think even I underappreciated it at the time. But when we were transitioning out of the Attitude Era, around the time where John Cena and everybody was coming in, we started getting those new guys. You remember when the Undertaker had that ladder match with Jeff Hardy? Is that considered the Attitude Era, or was that after?
My personal opinion, the Attitude Era ended after Mania X7. I could be wrong there. I could be wrong, and you might
Yeah.
disagree with me. But
No.
personally, I believe after Vince and Stone Cold shook hands, the Attitude Era ended. That is my personal opinion.
It kind of blends for me, but I think around that time when John Cena first came in, I didn't appreciate that era as much as I should have at the time. But I thought that was some really good stuff. Just going back and looking back on it.
Mm. So you talked
The
about
Ruthless
there.
Aggression era.
Yeah, Ruthless Aggression. What is one match or moment that you're like, okay, if you were to fire up the network today, I recommend you check out this from the Ruthless Aggression era.
So the Undertaker and John Cena's feud, really, just that whole thing, like when John Cena went to the graveyard and he like I don't know how he did some things he shouldn't have done to like a grave out there or something, but just that whole thing, that whole feud. And then you had the Undertaker and Kurt Angle. Well, yeah, Undertaker and Kurt Angle stuff. Like it was more of comedy stuff, but I did like that as well. So it's just a lot of different things from that Ruthless Aggression era. I really appreciated. But I think the number one thing was the Undertaker versus John Cena feud for
Mm.
me.
So I fully understand where you're coming from there. So as you get into content creating, where does Kenny Bomb come from? Where does your YouTube channel start, etc.?
So I've wanted to do YouTube content for a long time. I think it might be like this for a lot of people. It's just really press and record. So when I started my channel, I didn't really want to just do one thing, but I know I wanted to definitely cover wrestling. So I started out with, I believe AEW Fight Forever was the first video I made. Like that wasn't a gaming video. I made like one gaming video and then I did an AEW Fight Forever video. But because that game was coming out and I was excited about it, I said, you know what? This is just the time for me to actually go ahead and take the steps, just invest in the equipment and just get in here and do it. And really, that's where it started. I wanted to cover AEW. I thought Mortal Kombat was going to be revealed last year, so I wanted to make sure we got into that as well. So just those two things really gave me the motivation to get it going. And I wanted to cover a lot more wrestling than I do right now, but one thing I was trying to stay away from was trying to keep my channel from being just based on one thing. I want it to be kind of like a variety of things, which I know can be more difficult, but it's kind of turned into a wrestling channel and I'm not mad at that. So I can still cover whatever I want outside of that, but I do want to start covering more wrestling shows, like doing weekly podcasts for the AEW shows, or if we can watch Raw, SmackDown, things like that. I want to start, transition into that.
That's very cool. So you talked about some of your goals for the channel. I don't want to use the word mistakes, but if you look back at some of your early content, what is something you might be like, okay, Kenny, if we were to change this video now, we would do it this way, etc.
So I just because I've been doing this for less than a year, I never really looked back. Yeah, I started last August.
Damn, you're so good, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. That's kind of the thing. I really don't get anything as a mistake, but everything I do, if like it doesn't work, I'm like, okay, here's what I can kind of like apply it to this, or just not do that again. Or even if I put out a video and it doesn't perform, but it's something I'm really interested in, I just keep pushing that thing. Just keep pushing because maybe it just didn't get to the right people. And if I think I am about to pick up here is Dragon Ball Z Tenkaichi 4, because I love Dragon Ball Z. I'm sure you can see it. Didn't do well, but I'm gonna keep that going, whether they do well or not. Just because I don't want this to feel like a job. I always want it to be something, because I got a job I work in 8 hours per day. So I hate to get off work and then come do something that feels like more work. So as long as I enjoy it, I'm not forcing anything, we're just going to keep the ball rolling.
You talked about wanting to enjoy it, not wanting to feel like a job and stuff. I know you've only been at it for a year, but what do you do on them days? Maybe you've suffered from a bit of burnout and you're a bit like, I've recorded a load of videos lately, but I really want to record this video. How do you get yourself in that mindset to be like, okay, let's do this. Let's do this thing, to record a video sort of thing?
So luckily, I haven't reached out to burnout yet. I haven't reached that point. So I actually like, if I got a video to make, I want to make it in that moment and I want to put it out as soon as possible. That's one thing I probably should work on, is kind of like sitting on the videos, because if I can take more time to do editing on them, then I think they'll, be a better product. Absolutely. But it's just, I want to record and put it out immediately. So I'm just really excited to see the results, see how it performs. And if it doesn't perform well, looking at why it doesn't perform well to figure it out. So I haven't reached that burnout point yet, just because I think I'm still learning and I'm excited to learn more. I think I did like 445 videos so far in less than a year. So really, it's just figuring everything out.
You talked about wanting to learn and stuff. Who are the content creators within wrestling media that maybe you want to work, maybe not even wrestling media, but content creation, that you're like, I'd love to work with this person does great stuff, etc.?
So I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but I kind of try not to look at other content creators, well, bigger content creators, just because I am impressionable. And if I see somebody doing something, I might take that and start doing it myself, not even recognizing I'm taking what they're doing. So, I know some of the big content creators, but as far as working with other people, I rather work with smaller channels, just so we can help each other come up together.
That's very cool. So you talked about smaller channels there. Are there any underrated channels maybe on YouTube that you think people should check out and they deserve a bit more love?
Absolutely. I mean, there are some channels that are bigger than me, but we're kind of in the same neighborhood now because, I've grown pretty fast. But one channel that is smaller than me that I think really deserves a lot of recognition is Unsanctioned TV. They do a lot of wrestling game content as well. They've been covering like the AEW things that they
Was
need to
this the
fix in it.
Twitter account that you did a video on recently? I believe you used their Twitter. They put a Twitter out for AEW, if I remember correctly.
I'm not. They put out a tweet that was asking everybody to give feedback on different things they want to see fixed in it. So yeah, that was one of the tweets. Another one I shout out a lot is Lynch Reborn. He's like in the mod community, but he does mods for wrestling games. So he's doing good on Twitter right now. But yeah, it's just a lot of different channels,
Mm.
from the Mortal Kombat community to the wrestling community. So
You brought up there the Mortal Kombat and the wrestling community. What are some of the similarities that you see between both communities, and what are some of the differences, maybe?
So there's a big difference. So the Mortal Kombat community is more of what I thought the wrestling community would be, just because that community is very toxic. And a lot of the people, like even the big creators, like they kind of go at it a lot. So I try to stay out of it. That's why I said, I want to stay out of that. And I'd rather not be considered to be in the Mortal Kombat community or the wrestling community. I'm just whatever. But the wrestling community has been really good. So I haven't really gotten into any issues or seen any back and forth from anybody in the wrestling community. So I think I would rather fit into there than the Mortal Kombat community. But I just love both things. I don't want to abandon one thing for the other. But I guess the similarities, just people who are passionate about a certain thing. I know there are a lot of WWE fans that get passionate, and you'll see them in the comments section just coming there to bash the AEW game. But I used to be that guy, so I really don't blame them. So I mean, I guess there are some differences and similarities, but I think the wrestling community is a lot easier.
You talked about there. You used to be that guy that bashed. You bought up the AEW game, but Did you bash products or things like that?
Yeah, so I was strictly a WWF guy. So I had friends and some family members too that liked WCW. So it was like a WWF versus WCW thing. I'd always be standing on the fact that, I'll say here, DX was better than NWO. And, I say that, but I never really lived through the NWO or watched their product. So that's just me being a WWE guy. Just things like that, like TNA. I wouldn't watch it. I'd say their product sucks and everything just because I was strictly a WWF guy. But then, growing up, you see there are better, not even to say better because everything's subjective, but there are different things out there, different flavors. Everything can be good. Not just one thing has to be better than something else.
What was the moment that you were like, okay, I maybe need to change my ways and look into other products or other people? I don't want to say other people's opinions because that's a bit strong, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it was NXT actually. When I started watching NXT when it was the Adrian Neville, Sami Zayn, Sasha Banks, Bailey, when all of them were down there and having those great matches. I was like, man, these matches are amazing or whatever. And just in like game FAQs or things like that, where I talk to other people about wrestling, they're like, this is more like the stuff that you'll see at PWG or these other places, or this is where these wrestlers came from. That kind of made me like, okay, NXT is completely different than what we see on Raw and SmackDown. So I want to see more of what NXT is. And that led me to branching out and looking at other stuff.
If someone is at that point that you were, in your own words, where you were like, you were strictly a fan of one product and you were diehard of that product, if they are having it out with someone on Twitter, what would you say to them? Like, if you were to make an appeal to them now, to that person that's only watching one product and bashing everything else?
So honestly, personally, I would stay out of it just because I see where that other person is coming from, who is strictly to that one, loyal to that one brand. Because I was the same way with Xbox. I was Xbox only when I was younger, but missing out on a lot of those PlayStation games. I think it just takes time for people to realize that there are better things out there, and you can tell them that. But when you tell them that, if they're stuck in those ways, they're not going to listen to it. So you kind of just got to let people realize and learn to themselves, because you can tell them, but again, it might not help much, because back then, if you told me, hey, WCW was good, you should just check it out, I'm not checking it out because I'm strictly WWF.
You talked about there not really watching a lot of WCW. Have you gone back and watched any since you've had the network, maybe? And what is one moment that you're like, oh, I missed out. I should be watching this.
I haven't. I still,
Okay.
to this day, I don't like the look. I don't like the look of it. I don't know if it's something that kind of stained my mind back in the day, but I don't like the look or the presentation. It was kind of like, I don't know if it was because it was darker or what. I don't know. I just like the red ropes in WWF, the blue ropes in WWF. And I don't know. Even going back to this day, I wish I was there to see like the NWO saga play out because everybody says they're like the greatest thing that ever happened. I did used to like Chris Jericho. I liked Rey Mysterio, Disco Inferno, but my dad had a WCW video game. I don't know where he got it from because he never even watched WCW, but I used to use those wrestlers on that game. So just some of the wrestlers, I guess, to see where they came from as they were coming up. I see clips of Big Show like throwing not Big Show. I guess he was Paul White back then, like throwing Rey Mysterio into a truck. That was in WCW, right?
I think
Things
so.
like that. Yeah.
So you brought up there that you've only done this for a year. If we were to record this again in 2024, what are some of your goals for your channel, maybe personally as a wrestling fan, that you want to be like, okay, I'd like to be here in 2024?
So I like to be doing a weekly podcast, just like with subscribers. I brought up the idea before, but I never really got into it yet. This is actually like kind of my first long-term thing that I'm doing on camera, but I'd like to do like, let's say every Monday after Raw, me and maybe I put up a poll on Twitter and say, who wants to get on this with me? Me and 3 different subscribers get on and talk about the show. So not just me and one person every week, just me and whoever wants to talk about the show that week, we can go ahead and go through it. I'd like to be doing that weekly, at least maybe every Monday and Wednesday for Raw and AEW Dynamite.
So you brought up there Raw and Dynamite. Actually, before we say that, like, why do you feel like it's important for your subs? Because you are very sort of interactive with your subscribers and things like that. So why do you feel like that's important for building a YouTube brand or just a brand in general, maybe?
So I think it's important because I am just like all of them. You know, I was a guy in the comment section and I had to kind of get out of that as I started, you know, kind of getting, I guess, more known in the community, in different communities, because people take your opinion different when you're actually making content as well. So, I mean, if I'm in the comment section, I want to feel heard, or, you know, if I'm supporting your channel, I want to feel like, you know, I can speak to you. So sometimes it is tough. At first, it was really easy to be accessible and actually get to answer every message. Back in the earlier videos, I could answer every message in the comment section, but now it gets kind of tough. But I do take time to make sure I'm in there, at least interacting or reading the comments. So if you see a heart on that comment, I did read it, but it's just really tough to answer every message now. But if you're asking a question in the comment section, I do everything I can to make sure I answer that. So I'm not just going to leave a heart on the question. I'll always answer questions, but you know, I can't say it's always going to be that way because it just blew up so fast and it's kind of hard to keep up. But, you know, I think it is important to interact with the people who interact with you because, again, I definitely appreciate the support.
I understand what you're saying completely there because I'm still small and sometimes I'm like, wait, these people actually take time to watch a video. Do you feel like that sometimes?
Absolutely. All the time. They're like, man, I love your content, or, you know, I'm like, I tell them every time I appreciate you because I really do. My goal when I first started was to get 1,000 subscribers in a year. And I'm hoping that we can get 15 now. So that's crazy. I would never expect it to be this crazy. Yeah.
Congratulations, man, because you're very good at what you do.
I appreciate it, man. Again, and I never expected it to go this way. So I'm just really thankful. I appreciate you even having me on here, man.
As soon as
it's just insane to me. Like
as soon as I discovered you, I was like, he's so interesting. I need to talk to him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So before this gets very sappy, and as we look at wrapping this up, Kenny, we're gonna do a quick segment that I call generic questions. Those of you that have seen my interviews before will know this where I ask my guest Kenny's favorite wrestling match, Kenny's favorite overall pay-per-view, such as Double or Nothing 2019, for example, favorite wrestler's entrance music, favorite tag team, and favorite wrestler. Questions that, as Kenny grows, he might get asked on social media. So now he'll have a place to be like, look, guys, I love you all.
Yeah.
But I've answered this. Please go watch this video. So, what is your favorite wrestling match of all time?
My favorite wrestling match of all time has to be The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. No question, no doubt about it.
Why does that one speak to you out of interest?
It's just when I was watching that match, like I remember where I was, like it was just insane. Just the whole match. I was sitting there like out of my seat, like the first time I say I ever had like this, I just couldn't believe what I was watching. I just could not believe what I was watching. I can't even explain it to you right now. It was just such an amazing match
I understand.
from start to finish.
Fair, very fair. Personally, and we might have heat for this. Personally, I think the sequel is better, but that's only because I'm a story over moves guy. That is my do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I do hear some people saying that, but the sequel was really good. Don't get me wrong. I did love the sequel, and I love the matches Undertaker had with Triple H after that. But that first one was just the first time I really got that feeling, so it always stuck with me.
I understand what you're saying. What about your favorite overall pay-per-view?
My favorite overall pay-per-view, you know what? I'm more of a match guy, but when I think about a pay-per-view overall, I think it was AEW All Out. The one where I don't remember what year it was. It might have been 22, might have been 21. The one where Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole debuted.
2021.
2021. That's, I think, start to finish, that was my favorite pay-per-view of all time.
That's so cool. Why does that one make your list?
It just felt like it was like hit after hit after hit. And I didn't even get to watch it live. I was out. We went out of town for some reason, me and my family, but I stayed off the internet, deleted Twitter from my phone specifically so I didn't see any spoilers. But when we got back to the hotel room, I turned that on and, you know, I just stayed up. It was late, but I stayed up and watched that pay-per-view. And again, it was just hit after hit, great match after great match. And then they topped it off at the end with the debuts, and it was just insane.
That's very cool. What about your favorite wrestler's entrance music?
My favorite wrestler's entrance music. This one's going to be tough because if you ask me tomorrow, you might get a different answer. But
I'm like that with matches personally.
Yeah, I got a few top matches, but that was my top one. But as far as entrance music, I think I got to go with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Because once that glass hit, you knew what was going down. You knew what was going on. And just to this day, whenever you hear that music, it just brings me back to those times. So I think the most impactful has to be Stone Cold. And that's the one that always comes to mind if you ask me that question. So I'm going to go with Stone Cold.
That's very cool. What about your favorite overall tag team?
My favorite overall tag team. You know what? I'm probably going to go with the New Day. Just because of how they came out, they were getting booed and everything. And then, they turned that around completely. So, when I think of best of all time, I usually always go back to the Attitude Era, but I think the New Day did a lot during their run when they were like hot. I think they were like my favorite thing to watch when I turned on wrestling at one point. So I'm going to go with them.
That's very cool. And then I think I know the answer based on the start of this conversation. Who is your favorite overall wrestler, Kenny?
Favorite wrestler of all time or right now? Of all time, it has to be Undertaker, 100%.
I knew that was coming. But for people that may not know, why is the Undertaker your favorite wrestler, etc.?
So Shawn Michaels is the first wrestler I think I was really introduced to that I know. But when I saw the Undertaker, he just really grabbed me, like with the purple gloves and everything. Just his, the promos. Everybody said he wasn't really a great promo, but I think the Undertaker was a great promo. Always. I don't like scary movies, and I do like dark stuff for whatever reason. So the Undertaker kind of was all of that, and it might be because of the Undertaker, because I grew up with him, that left that impression on me. But I don't know, just basically everything. I liked his in-ring style. The Ministry of Darkness Undertaker was always my favorite. So yeah, and that was kind of like the darkest Undertaker, I think. So I mean, I don't know. It's just always been Undertaker.
That's very cool. And I really appreciate your time today, Kenny. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time.
So as we wrap this up, Kenny, the question I end my interviews on is, I believe as content creators, if you think about the world, we're all gonna live forever in some sort of very strange way. So what is one piece of content you're like, I want to be remembered for that? And then what is one that you're like, if you could delete that from your brains, guys, I would appreciate that.
One piece of content I would want to be remembered by. I honestly don't think I have made it yet, but if I had to leave with something I did so far, maybe my AEW Fight Forever review of the video game, just because that was one of my goals. I wanted to, get a game early, like, get into a place where people saw me and they could actually, they would want to give me something to review for them. And I actually got offers from THQ, and they sent other people to actually give me offers to get the game early. I did get it late, but I still got it early, and I was able to get that review up. So I was worried about how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this in this amount of time I have? But I think what I came out with actually was pretty good. So I'd say from what I've made so far, I'd say it'd be that one, my AEW review, and one that I could delete out of history. I'd say I just put up a review for a chair Ewin Gaming or Ewin Racing sent me. So shout out to them for the sponsorship. I really appreciate it. But review videos are tough, so I'd say that one.
Fair enough. As I say, I've really enjoyed this conversation. One of probably my favorite current creators, and one that I think if he doesn't have at least 100,000 subscribers by the time we do this again next year, I'll be very surprised, because he's also a very nice human being as well. So as we wrap this up, Kenny, where can the good people find you, your content, etc.?
I appreciate that, Tom. So I'm on Twitter at KennyBomb4K. Same on Instagram, KennyBomb4K. And my YouTube is Kenny Bomb. If you type in KennyBomb.com, it'll get you right there. But I appreciate you again for having me today, Tom. I'm looking forward to doing it again next year. So we'll definitely be in touch.
Definitely. So if you guys like this video, make sure you follow Kenny in all the places he mentioned. Subscribe to the channel at Tom Talk Trash on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at Tom Talk Trash. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye now.